My friends, today I want to talk to you about a mystery that often leaves us confused and wondering, why does God allow seasons of isolation in our lives? Why do we feel alone, misunderstood, and set apart? Let me tell you this. God never isolates you to harm you. He isolates you to prepare you. Just as Jesus went into the wilderness before his ministry began, you too may be walking through a season of separation. But remember, God's plan for you is greater than your current pain. Stay with me as we dive into his word and uncover the truth about how God isolates us before pouring out his blessings. Isolation can often feel like a punishment, but in reality it is one of God's divine strategies to shape, mold, and prepare us for what lies ahead. Throughout the Bible, we see countless examples of individuals whom God separated from their familiar surroundings to fulfill a greater purpose. Joseph was isolated in a pit and later in prison before he rose to power in Egypt. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before God called him to lead the Israelites out of bondage. Even Jesus withdrew to solitary places to pray and was led into the wilderness before beginning his ministry. These seasons of separation are not meant to harm us, but to prepare us for the weight of our calling. When God isolates us, he is removing the noise and distractions of the world. He takes us away from people and situations that may hinder our growth or dilute his voice. It is in these moments of solitude that he works deeply within us, stripping away pride, doubt, and fear while building character, resilience, and unwavering faith. Isolation forces us to confront ourselves and our reliance on things or people other than God. It is in the quiet that we can hear his voice more clearly, receive his guidance, and understand his will for our lives. During these times, it may seem as though nothing is happening, but God is working behind the scenes. He is aligning circumstances, building relationships, and creating opportunities that will unfold when the time is right. Isolation is a period of preparation where God is equipping us with the strength, wisdom, and faith we need for the next season. It is not a punishment, but a necessary step in the journey toward the fulfillment of his promises for us. God separates you to refine your character. When we are surrounded by the comforts and distractions of daily life, it's easy to overlook areas in our character that need growth. Isolation is God's way of placing us in a spiritual workshop where he can chip away at the rough edges and refine us into the individuals he has called us to be. This process is not always easy, as it often involves confronting weaknesses, bad habits, and deeply rooted patterns that need to change. However, God doesn't do this to break us. He does it to make us stronger, purer, and more in alignment with his purpose. When you are removed from the familiar and placed in a season of solitude, it forces you to take a deeper look within yourself. You begin to realize areas where pride, selfishness, or impatience may have taken root. In the absence of outside validation or distractions, God begins to teach you about humility, grace, and perseverance. These are lessons that cannot always be learned in the busyness of life, but they are essential for your spiritual growth and preparation for the blessings ahead. This refining process can feel uncomfortable, but it is necessary for the plans God has for your future. Just as gold is purified in the fire, so too are we refined through the trials and challenges that come with isolation. It's in these moments that God reshapes your character, building within you the strength and wisdom you will need for the calling he has placed on your life. The isolation is not a sign of rejection, but a sign of preparation, ensuring that you are ready to step into the greater purpose that lies ahead. Wilderness seasons prepare you for greater responsibilities. When God leads you into a season of isolation, it often feels like a time of barrenness, but it's actually a place of preparation. The wilderness is where God removes distractions and strips away anything that doesn't align with His plan for your life. It's not a place of punishment, but a training ground where He builds your endurance, shapes your faith, and equips you for the next level of responsibility He has in store for you. In the wilderness, you learn to rely solely on God. Without the comforts and security of your usual surroundings, you're forced to develop a deeper dependence on Him. It's in this environment that He teaches you to trust Him completely, even when you don't understand the plan. You begin to see how He provides in unexpected ways, how His timing is always perfect, and how His strength sustains you in your weakest moments. This is where your faith is strengthened, not by ease, but by necessity. God uses the wilderness to test and prove your character. He wants to see if you'll remain faithful when the journey is difficult, if you'll trust Him when the path isn't clear, and if you'll stay obedient even when the rewards aren't immediate. These seasons stretch you, building the resilience and spiritual maturity required to handle the blessings and responsibilities that await you. Without this preparation, you might not be able to sustain or steward the very things you're praying for. The wilderness is where God cultivates the qualities you'll need for your calling: patience, perseverance, humility, and strength. It's a place of hidden growth, where you're being shaped and molded for something far greater than you can imagine. Isolation reveals your true dependence on God. When the distractions of daily life are stripped away and the noise of the world is silenced, you are left with nothing but your relationship with God. It's in this solitude that the truth about where your trust lies is revealed. Often we unknowingly place our dependence on people, circumstances, or material things to feel secure. Isolation removes those crutches, forcing us to confront whether our faith is truly anchored in God or in temporary sources of comfort. During times of isolation, God brings you to a place where you realize that He alone is your provider, sustainer, and guide. When there is no one else to turn to, no immediate answers, and no visible way forward, you're reminded that He is always present, always listening, and always in control. It's in these moments that your relationship with Him deepens, and you begin to understand what it means to fully trust in His goodness and sovereignty. In isolation, God also teaches you that His grace is sufficient. You learn to lean on Him for strength, wisdom, and peace in ways you never have before. The absence of external support or validation creates an opportunity for God to show you that He is enough. This dependence on Him builds a foundation of faith that can withstand any storm, because you've experienced firsthand that He is faithful and able to sustain you in every season. Through isolation, God shifts your focus from relying on external sources to relying on His unchanging presence and promises. This deepened dependence is not just for the season you're in. It's a preparation for the challenges and blessings to come, ensuring that your faith remains steadfast regardless of what lies ahead. God removes distractions to deepen your faith. In the fast pace of life, it's easy to get caught up in routines, relationships, and responsibilities that can cloud your focus on God. Distractions, even well-meaning ones, can dilute your spiritual growth and prevent you from hearing His voice clearly. When God brings you into a season of isolation, He is intentionally removing those distractions to create space for a deeper connection with Him. This process can feel uncomfortable because it often involves letting go of things or people you thought you couldn't live without. You may find yourself separated from certain friendships, removed from familiar environments, or facing unexpected changes in your plans. But God's purpose in this is not to deprive you, it's to draw you closer to Him. By removing the noise, He gives you the opportunity to focus solely on Him and to rediscover the power of His presence in your life. In this quiet space, your faith is tested and strengthened. You learn to seek God with greater intensity and to rely on Him in ways you never have before. Without the usual distractions, you begin to notice His hand in the details of your life and to recognize His voice in the stillness. This time of isolation becomes a sacred opportunity for spiritual growth, where God reveals more of Himself to you and deepens your understanding of His character. God uses these seasons to build a faith that is unshaken by external circumstances. He strips away the superficial so that your relationship with Him becomes the foundation of your life. When the distractions are gone, you begin to experience the fullness of His peace, guidance, and love, strengthening your trust in Him for the journey ahead. Your calling requires solitude for clarity. Before stepping into the fullness of your purpose, God often separates you from the noise of life to help you focus and align with His plan. It's in these moments of solitude that God begins to speak clearly, revealing His specific direction and equipping you with the vision you need for the path ahead. Without this time alone with Him, the distractions and competing voices around you could cloud your understanding of what He is truly calling you to do. Solitude allows God to refine your perspective and reveal His priorities for your life. Often we carry our own ideas of success, influenced by culture, family, or personal ambition. But in isolation, those external pressures are stripped away, giving God room to reshape your mindset and align it with His will. It's a time when He clarifies the desires He has placed in your heart, helping you to see which ones are from Him and which ones need to be surrendered. This period of separation also strengthens your ability to hear God's voice above all others. As you spend time in prayer, reflection, and stillness, you grow more attuned to His leading. He teaches you to trust Him even when the path isn't fully revealed, and to step out in faith when the time comes. Solitude becomes a training ground for obedience, where you learn to depend on His guidance and recognize His hand in every detail of your journey. Through this process, God prepares you for the weight of your calling. He builds the spiritual foundation you'll need to sustain the work He has planned for you. Solitude is not a pause in your progress, but an essential step in receiving the clarity and confidence required to walk boldly in your purpose. Isolation is God's way of pruning for growth. Just as a gardener trims away branches to encourage a plant's healthier and more abundant growth, God uses seasons of isolation to remove what is no longer serving your spiritual development. This pruning process may involve cutting away habits, relationships, or mindsets that hinder your ability to grow into the person He has called you to be. While it can feel painful, it is a necessary part of His plan to prepare you for something greater. During isolation, God identifies areas in your life that need refining. These might include unhealthy attachments, pride, or self-reliance that limit your ability to fully trust Him. By removing these elements, He creates space for new blessings, deeper wisdom, and spiritual maturity. It's in this pruning process that your character is shaped, and you are made ready for the responsibilities and opportunities that await you. Pruning also allows God to redirect your energy and focus. When unnecessary or harmful distractions are cut away, you can channel your time and effort into what truly matters: your relationship with Him, and the work He has called you to do. This process enables you to bear more fruit in the long run as your faith and obedience grow stronger. Though it may feel as if you're losing something during this time, God's intention is to give you something far better. The pruning season is a sign of His love and care, ensuring that you are prepared to thrive in the next chapter of your life. It is His way of ensuring that you are not weighed down by anything that could prevent you from fulfilling your God-given purpose. God often hides you before He elevates you, before God brings you into the spotlight or positions you for greater influence. He takes time to prepare you in a place of hiddenness. This season of being unseen is not a sign of rejection, but of protection. God uses this time to shield you from premature exposure and to ensure that your character, faith, and abilities are fully developed for the responsibilities ahead. In hiddenness, God cultivates qualities that can only be built away from the public eye. He teaches you humility by reminding you that His approval matters more than human applause. He strengthens your perseverance by allowing you to work and grow without immediate recognition. And He deepens your trust in Him, showing you that even when no one else notices, He sees your efforts and honors your faithfulness. This period of being hidden is also a time of preparation. God uses it to equip you with the wisdom, skills, and spiritual maturity you'll need when He brings you into the position He has planned for you. Just as David was anointed king long before he sat on the throne, God often works in the background, refining you for a purpose that is yet to be revealed. While it may feel frustrating to be overlooked or set aside, remember that God is not delaying your elevation. He is aligning it with His perfect timing. The season of hiddenness ensures that when He does elevate you, you will have the strength, humility, and wisdom to sustain it. It's not about staying hidden forever. It's about being prepared to step into His purpose when the moment is right. Silence from others allows you to hear God's voice. In the busyness of life, it's easy to become distracted by the opinions and voices of those around you. People's expectations, advice, and judgments can cloud your ability to hear God's clear direction. Isolation and silence create the space necessary for you to tune out those external influences and listen more attentively to God. It's in these quiet moments that His voice becomes clearer, His guidance more distinct, and His presence more tangible. When God allows silence from others, it is often an invitation to draw near to Him. Without the constant noise, you can focus on His Word, seek His will, and receive the wisdom and understanding He wants to impart. In times of isolation, you begin to recognize the still, small voice of God that speaks to your heart, giving you peace in the midst of confusion, clarity in the midst of uncertainty, and direction when the path ahead seems unclear. The silence can also deepen your relationship with God. Without the distraction of people's opinions or the pull of external validation, you are left to rely solely on God. This dependence helps you build a stronger, more intimate connection with Him. One that doesn't rely on the approval or opinions of others, but is rooted in His love and truth. Through this silence, God often leads you to deeper revelations about your life, your purpose, and His plans for you. It's in the quiet that He can speak directly to your spirit, filling you with peace, wisdom, and the confidence to walk boldly in the direction He's calling you. Silence is not abandonment. It's an opportunity to hear the voice of the one who knows you best and loves you most. Trust in God's timing during seasons of isolation. When you find yourself in a place of solitude, it's easy to become anxious or discouraged, wondering why things aren't moving as quickly as you hoped, or why God feels distant. But in these moments, it's essential to remember that God's timing is always perfect. While we may feel that we're ready for the next step, or that our season of isolation has lasted too long, God knows exactly when we are prepared to step into the next phase of His plan for our lives. Isolation is often a season of preparation where God is aligning circumstances, working behind the scenes, and building in you the character and strength necessary for the responsibilities ahead. If He were to open doors too soon, you might not be spiritually or emotionally prepared to handle what comes with them. Trusting in His timing means recognizing that He is not only shaping your circumstances, but also shaping you. He is aligning everything in your life according to His perfect will. During these times, it's vital to focus on what God is doing in you rather than what He is doing for you. Trust that He sees the big picture, even when you can only see the present moment. As you wait, He is preparing you for greater things. Things that may not be visible yet, but that will come to fruition in His perfect time. God does not operate on our timeline. He operates on His own, which is always far better than ours. Rest in the assurance that when the time is right, God will bring you out of isolation and into the blessings He has been preparing for you all along. In conclusion, friends, I want to remind you that isolation is not a sign of abandonment or punishment from God. It is a divine strategy, a purposeful season where God refines your character, builds your faith, and prepares you for the greater responsibilities and blessings He has in store. During these times, God removes distractions, clarifies your calling, and strengthens your dependence on Him. It's in the quiet and hidden places that God shapes you, prunes you, and molds you into the person He needs you to be for the journey ahead. Trust that if you are in a season of isolation, it is not because God has forgotten you or is keeping you from His promises. He is simply preparing you for what is to come. His timing is perfect, and every moment you spend in His presence is a moment of growth, even when it feels like nothing is happening. Keep your eyes on Him, trust His process, and know that He will elevate you when the time is right. God's purpose for your life is greater than you can imagine, and the isolation you may feel now is simply a step toward the fulfillment of His promises. So rest in His timing, trust in His plan, and hold on to the hope that the best is yet to come. He is not done with you yet, and the blessings He has for you are just around the corner. Keep the faith, stay obedient, and let God do the work He needs to do in you during this season of preparation.